Ego Hour acknowledges the traditional owners of the land upon which we record, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation,
and the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation.
We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging.
Get down, it's Ego Hour. It's Ego Hour.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Good Brother.
And I'm Lil Silky.
And welcome to Ego Hour, the show where we deliver objectively true film reviews. Start the timer for me, Tom. Where's the watch?
Anything said over the next 60 minutes will stand up in any court of law or dystopian environment you find yourself in.
These reviews are non-negotiable,
Non-refundable.
and non-scripted. So, let's chat about Children of Men.
Released in the UK on the 22nd of September 2006, Children of Men, also known by its alternative release title, Uncharted 5: The Last of Us, is the story of Theo, a former activist who must escort the last pregnant woman on Earth to an evacuation site, avoiding extremists and the British government along the way. Directed by Alfonso Cuaron, the story was adapted from P.D. James's 1992 novel of the same time. What?
Same name.
Same name. Wait, whatever. Made on a budget of $76 million, it was a commercial flop, earning only $70 million back. Clocking in with a runtime of 1 hour and 49 minutes, the film may just leave you wondering, is Australia okay in this dystopia?
I would say definitely not.
Yeah, the alternative joke there was going to be, the film may just leave you wondering, is this what a second Trump term looks like? But I thought, we're not getting political.
Is this what Brexit looks like? I don't know.
That's true.
Context.
You and Ben have seen this movie before, and you kept saying to me, Tom, you got to watch this movie, and I said, I'll watch it, and then it got taken off Netflix.
I know, and then there was literally no other way to find it until I bought it on Blu-ray.
Blu-ray, and it was like one of the early release Blu-rays, so it's very in your face about how Blu-ray it is. It's, welcome.
Lots of menus.
Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray menu sounds just wild. I guess Blu-ray came out ages ago now, but it felt dated at the time. I reckon the.
I'm not even particularly familiar with it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. They're just very heavy.
It's just a bit too much going on. It's like menus back in the day when same thing in like
were
video
peaking.
games and stuff like that. At that era, it's like lots of menus. They're like, we can put a menu here. Look at all the things you can do while it's loading, or while there's a menu while you're playing the game. And
Yeah.
it's just like, just chill, you know?
Yes, hub design is huge. I think it became like minimalism came through after that, I guess.
Retro logos.
But what's that?
You know, retro, simple looking logos.
Oh, retro logos. I thought it was low res. And I said, Nick, I'm watching Blu-ray for the high definition quality, not for the low res.
Yeah.
Have you tried watching a DVD in a while?
What, you can't watch it?
It's unbearable. They're so low
That's
quality.
so funny. But we used to watch, you know,
Copies
of someone filming on a handheld in a cinema.
Yes.
Oh, God.
There's this famous like reference in filmmaking where they're like, everyone cares about sound so much. You'll watch something with bad picture, but you won't watch something with bad sound. And that's sort of like, it is fairly true.
You reckon?
Like, because we watched, you know, terrible recordings of movies sometimes, and then you do it because the sound, as long as you could hear what was going on, you were fine. But as soon, like picture, you could handle a bit of shitness.
Right. I don't know, because I think sound, I obviously look at it from a music perspective where it's like, people definitely put up with some bad sound stuff. And there's definitely an era of music where we were transitioning from analog recording to digital recording, where the quality is notably quite bad compared to now.
Yeah.
Which is funny, I think.
Yeah. I guess it's just, I just remember distinct times in history where it felt like we were there with digital technology, and then you look back and we weren't, you know?
I remember watching like kids' movies and being like, wow, the CG in this is so good. It couldn't possibly get any better.
Yeah.
And then you watch it and you're like, wow.
But yeah, I guess the ironic part of digital is that it was always pursuing realism, so it wanted to look non-spectacular. So the stuff that's killing it today, like the Marvel stuff, is just blends in. So the whole point is you wouldn't know what part is CGI.
Yeah, I guess so.
But then there was CGI that drew attention to itself for so long. Like Avatar felt pretty important when we were in the cinemas seeing it. Yeah, and I watched Fellowship of the Ring recently in the 4K scan, and it held up pretty well. But there was occasional things that looked a little bit funny. But then, you know, that'd be expected for a movie that's like 15, more than that, like 18 years old or whatever. 2003 or something like that.
2001. It's 20 years
2001.
old.
God, yeah, 20 years ago. And then also, it was good for like 90% of it, but then the 10% was like wide shots of them running from far away, and it's just like not meant to be seen this big, so they just like have no gravity sort of, and the shadows aren't as good. But that was the only thing really.
It's like in the Harry Potters where Harry's on a broomstick in the air, like.
I love that part of it though. Like that part has actually aged well for me in the sense that I look forward to seeing the kind of silly CGI. And then like the troll stuff as well. Like it's still like pretty good. It obviously has all the principles of good animation.
Yeah.
But, speaking of a movie that's not CGI, Children of Men.
This
has some crazy long take stuff. See, when you said, I always get Alfonso mixed up with our boy Inarritu because he also is a fan of the long take. It's like this movie walked so Birdman could run.
I don't know. I like the thing is Birdman is like a one long take sort of thing is the thing, and you're like everyone's like, wow, this movie's one take sort of thing. But this one is a little bit more relaxed on that, I think. And it's a different sort of way of doing it where you go like 1917 or Birdman, where it's like the whole film was like that, and this is part of the experience. Whereas in this, the shots, I think the effect is more like a shot just keeps going. So it's not like you go like, oh, I'm in for a long take here. It's like the shot just keeps going and going and going and going.
Yeah, it's a good point. Because you know that there still are cuts, but you don't know when it's coming. So like, sorry, go.
But that's like what he does in his films, Same with like Roma. I think Roma is a good example because it's like the cinematography is like cinematic still, and it's black and white. It's obviously about setting these nice scenes, and then the are just like really long scenes in it as well. That you go, well, like, wow, this scene's been going for 6 minutes, and like that's the effect of it versus from the start that you're in for a continuous shot, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of potentially distracting when it is like everything because you're looking for it. I think Birdman does well because the one takeness of it all is sort of fantastical still. Like there's times where it's not sequentially one take.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's more just like a feeling of the film, because you're right, it's not meant to be.
They're creating the world mostly. It's like here's a world where you can go from the lead actor going into his dressing room to the
and
producer.
it follows different people around. It's not meant to be a point of, and because like even in 1970, don't they have like a scene where he passes out or something like that? So like you need to break it at some point narratively. You don't actually want it to be
because you can't have 2 hours of exciting stuff happen in life, really.
But does that mean in 1970 that big hike they're going on is only a 2-hour walk? Like, is that not that far of a distance to travel?
He gets in cars.
He gets in a car,
and stuff,
yeah, I guess so.
And yeah, I think the point is sort of that it's not. Maybe it isn't that far because he's going through contested territory.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so for my birthday this year, I got given
1917 and Children of Men.
The long take movies. Just need Bird Ray.
Rage.
No, Bird Ray, the new high definition viewing experience. Anyway, so Children of Men, that was that context, and it's just like it's a well-regarded movie. People seem to speak of it fondly.
It just breaks my heart that this is a flop because I just don't see how this is a flop because I think
you do as well, don't you?
Do you? Like, I feel like you can show this movie to arty film people and they'll be like, wow, look at all this stuff. And then you could show, and like, concepts about immigration and all this sort of political stuff. And then you can show it to someone who just wants to watch an action movie and the action scenes are like mind-blowing.
I just think it's ahead of its time. Like, this was 2006, sorry. And it's just, like, these themes are things that are more addressed now. Think about
topics.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to reflect on because we were younger, but it did seem like people weren't as stressed about this stuff. Obviously, there were people fighting the good fight, but like 2006, like two years ago, is the Iraq War and stuff like that. You can't tell me that sympathy towards refugees
nationalist ideology was pretty peak at that point in time.
Well, it's weird because we obviously now. Yeah, but it also exists. It's more dynamic. It's more contrasty. It's more just like because these are discourses that, like, imagine if this film came out today. I imagine that it would genuinely make more than it made then.
Yeah, because
people would talk about it and people would be like, "This is an important movie that you need to see." There were platforms for people to celebrate it more than there are now.
Yeah,
there were then.
What's really cool about this film is that all that stuff is super present and relevant, but the way that it's shot makes it feel like, like it feels like context, but not like context that's like forced down your throat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and it's obviously exactly what they were going for, where they wanted it to feel real, and that's why they do all those long takes and that whole kind of first person sort of vibe to it.
Yeah.
But it's a really smart way of doing it, and it does feel really scary, I think, for that reason,
Yeah. With how you were saying, I think you nailed it. That the key long take thing isn't that is that you don't know when the take's going to end. You don't know when the scene's going to wrap up, basically, and that functions narratively as well. So it's basically like because even in the scene, the one of the two scenes, the car scene where they get ambushed, I genuinely didn't see that coming. Of course, maybe I could have seen it like end in with something going on, but I didn't see it like people dying, people getting out of the car, stuff like that. I didn't think it would get that complex.
Yeah, I have to say that probably one of the best decisions is the biggest move. Okay, so this film sets up the stakes really quickly as really being high. Well, you've got that big explosion at the start, which is cool, and you're like, wow, this is a bit intense, because that feels quite intense. And like knew that explosion was coming, and I was like kind of a bit on edge waiting for it to happen because I couldn't. There's not beats for it to happen. Do you know what I mean? And the other part is obviously killing off Julianne Moore like very early.
Yeah,
which is
they have to, obviously.
Well, they have to, but like it functions narratively. But they didn't have to make her like. It's like they do such a good job of like selling
that she's going to be in it the whole time.
Yeah, and selling chemistry between them and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And then just killing her off straight away. It's crazy.
Yeah, very unconventional.
Because what they have to do is that they've got to get you to believe that Key would believe in Theo, right? So they've got to get you to believe in their relationship because she believes in Julianne Moore.
Yeah,
and they do all of this like very quickly, and they pull it off.
Yeah, it's just breaking Hollywood convention. But the whole having a big build actor and killing them off works every single time. Name one time where it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's good. And then Michael Caine dies shortly after as well.
Michael Caine, I think you could see coming.
Yeah.
I feel like his death was drawn out as well, to be honest. I thought he was... Like, I don't really understand why they keep him alive. Like, why does he feed his wife the suicide drugs and not take them himself?
He's stolen.
I suppose so, but it just means he's going to suffer more, Anyway, Michael Caine has got life figured out in this world. Old Jasper. He's got the good tunes. He's got old age. Is there a world where you can come to terms with infertility and a shit world and you could relax and enjoy yourself?
Well, the point is, I think that in a world, like, children represent hope, right? And without children, there's no reason to hold yourself to good virtue and stuff like that anymore, because it's like, for what? We're not preserving anything anymore. There's no future to set the standard for, or no future to strive towards, So on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, you can see how that would go very badly.
Mm-hmm. How bad do you think day-to-day life is in this world?
Pretty terrible. Well, you've got to think that everywhere else has collapsed except for England.
Clive Owen's still in the office punching papers. He's doing okay. How many people... So everywhere in the world shut down except for England?
Well, that's what the propaganda would have you believe, at least.
Yeah. Good point. So, back to my intro. Australia. Maybe Australia's okay. Maybe this is the film that... Okay, hear me out. Ready? So, the year is 2025. Australia votes on a referendum to get out of the Commonwealth.
Right.
England collapses. They lose all morale.
Because of Australia.
they form... Well, first they have Meghan and Harry leaving, and then they've got Australia leaving.
Oh, no.
So they launch a political propaganda campaign to convince everyone that the world's ending and there's no children, and to promote nationalistic ideals. So this movie is like M. Night Shyamalan, where everywhere else in the world is fine, but it's just this country that's cooked, and it's like propaganda. Hear me out.
It has to be, but the propaganda narrative is like,
and it's also
probably real.
It's a technique developed by British cinematographers to cut their teeth on real interesting sets, and because British film in this world isn't very good at the moment, so they need to relaunch British film. So they allow for one takes and severe conditions to thrive.
I don't understand where this has gone. Are we talking about this being the real world and this film was shot in the real post-apocalyptic world? and telling the same story. It's a documentary. Yeah. I'm just looking at your computer and you've got the Oscars there, so I'm quite interested to talk about that.
Yeah, this is Best Cinematography. They were nominated for Best Cinematography.
And Pan's Labyrinth won.
And Pan's Labyrinth won. Pretty good year. Prestige, The Illusionist, Black Dahlia. Not familiar with that one.
The Prestige and The Illusionist are the same movie, aren't they?
I genuinely thought that, honestly. One of them's Nolan. The other one's who?
I don't know, to be honest.
You could have...
It's got Edward Norton in it, I think.
You genuinely could have told me that was the movie and I would have believed you. Anyway. Pan's Labyrinth.
What's
good
Black
movie.
Dahlia? I haven't seen that.
Not familiar with it. It's a foreign film, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, so...
Or cast. Charlie Hunnam. That's the guy from Sons of Anarchy, and I think he's the dude with the long yellow braids. In 2027, everyone's into long braided hair as well. Oh,
Yeah.
not braided hair, cornrows. What do you call them? Dreadlocks, yeah.
What's so that was all it was nominated for?
It got nominated for 2 other things as well, including Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing. It didn't win any of those. It was also it got Best Cinematography at the BAFTAs and Best Production Design. Production design's a good point, actually. This film has obviously great production design. The world building is probably one of the best parts of watching this film. Like, whether you like the story or the progression or not, it's just really great being immersed in a world that's so curated, right?
Yeah. The thing is, it's this thing where it's not too far away from reality, but like far enough away where it gets to like kind of walk this good middle ground, I think. Like, it's not set in a future that doesn't look anything like our world, but it's like also not.
It's just
It
like
does feel
grunging up this world a bunch. Like the train
it
stuff.
grunges up
Is
at
he
a-
on a train or on a bus?
On the bus, yeah.
He's on a bus. And like they've graffitied walls, and like you could actually do that, and then they've just thrown in heaps of extras, you know. Like, that's not that convoluted to do, but just that in combination with the grade and like
And just the way it's shot, and from his perspective, where you only need to show, it just shows it in a way where you feel like, you know, how it's oppressive, and you know that you feel it weighing down on you, sort of thing, as a person, as opposed to like having to show more than that, and maybe it feeling like a set done up, I guess.
Yeah.
You know.
I think that
Because part of the world building is people, actually, as well. It's all the extras and the way that all that's done, I think.
Well, one weird funny take I had was that before we got to the refugee camp, I was like convinced it was a small budget film because I didn't know that it was expensive. And I thought, because when you think about it, at the start, they're in the city, there's an explosion, you know, people can be pretty savvy with their budgets. Then they get out into the country and they're hanging out at like farmhouse. They're driving along country roads. They're on the bus and stuff. It's all stuff that I thought could have been downplayed. And then you get into the refugee camp and it's just insanely large scale.
Yeah.
There's thousands of extras in this area. I'm like, maybe they got a good deal, and then they start blowing up everything inside. It's like, okay, maybe they do need $76 million to make this.
Yeah.
Do you think, I guess this is a narrative part as well, but do you think it had to be this big, this $76 million film?
I think it's the perfect size.
Yeah?
Do you think it could be smaller?
Well, yeah, I do wonder if it could be smaller, because I find that last scene, whilst incredibly engaging, it's sort of a little teetering towards spectacle rather than content to me a little bit. It gets to this is like take, so, and you're shook, I can tell. So they get into the refugee camp, and I really like entering the refugee camp. I think it's powerful, and I think it's important for the actual themes of the story to highlight how terrible these places are and how savage countries and governments are towards individuals, right? Like the British dude who gets on the bus, I think he has a really good part where he's just like being a shithead. But yeah, so then we end up in this room where she delivers her baby. And then we come down with that dude. What's that guy's name?
Sid.
Don't have Sid credited here on my list. Yeah, Sid. And then leads them back down. And then that leads into the long-ass scene where they're trying to run away. Mm-hmm. And they interact with the
fishers.
The fishers. And then they have the shootout with the police and stuff like that. Obviously, it becomes this ultimate shot. But narratively, it does lose a little bit of focus. It's sort of there just to create tension and to create this moment of survival.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't, like maybe, but also on the other hand, it is an action film. So it's like, there's your action scene. and it's messy. I mean, I guess that's what you're saying, but then ultimately, Clive Owen needs to get shot, and you need to have that scene where she's holding the baby and walking down the stairs, and everyone stops. Like that, those are narrative functions of that scene, and it's like, yeah, if you pad it out a bit more, sure, but it's not like it's.
Wonder how long the book is, because the story's kind of short, is what I'm getting at.
I think it's quite different.
Yeah.
Substantially enough different.
Yeah. So the author has said that he likes the film, but I didn't get a grasp on how accurate it is to the original interpretation. Yeah, I don't know. I probably would have wound back the scope a little bit, and I guess the situations are all sort of a type of danger. They're less political danger than I would have expected a little bit. Less like dialogue and interaction danger.
I don't know. I just think that you've got, but this movie is it's doing two things. Like you're saying, you kind of want it to be more of the political film. And it's like, I don't think it necessarily has to be, because but that's not what I think it's going for ultimately, I would say.
What do you think? You think it's going for like spectacle, intensity, immersion?
I think it's about immersion above all, you know what I mean? And it's not about the people talking about the situation that's going on. It's going, accept this is reality, and then we'll tell this story of hope or whatever. You know what I mean?
I can openly say that this is like one of the most tense I've been in a film, sort of. Like I genuinely didn't have a sense of where it was going.
Yeah.
And as
I think the length is a good part of this film, is that it's not too long. And in terms of like traditional film structures and flows, it feels like you're not that far into it and then it ends, which, you know, might sound like I'm critiquing it, but which I think is actually a strength of it. Do you know what I mean? Because it kind of is over before you have a chance to like necessarily land into a groove or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it makes you go like, wow, that was nuts, you know? So I think that's a big plus of it. And I remember feeling that, I felt that way watching it this time, and also the first time I watched it, where it was like, there's 20 minutes left or something, and you feel like you're kind of gearing up for a second act, or, you know, second or third act or something like that.
Yeah.
It sets itself up like it's going to be like a big road movie or something like that.
That's true.
But then it doesn't go there, which I think is good.
Yes, I think you'd want your audience wanting more, or like not wanting more, but just not having drawn it out too much. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the fishes?
In what way?
I think that they annoy me a little bit as a crew of baddies. They are they're just a little bit unbelievable for me.
Which part?
The extremism, the fact, their type of terrorist attacks, their leadership, sort of, like that guy leading the group. Everyone's sort of a bit blindly loyal to him without being really super loyal to him. It kind of surprised me a little bit.
But Julianne Moore was the leader.
So they've collapsed a bit, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
On screen. And then I don't love how, like, I know that narratively we want them to arrive in the refugee camp, but it is a little bit confusing to me that they get into the refugee camp for the uprising.
But they don't know that the uprising is going to happen.
Yeah. So how do they...
They want to get... So what's happening is that everyone who's in the fishes knows the plan, right?
Yes.
Of trying to get to the human project, right? And so you might have missed this bit of exposition.
Yeah, well, because that was the other thing about this film, and this isn't a criticism, but like there were times where I genuinely just didn't understand what was going on because I don't know if it was accents or just like the pace it was moving at, but I did get a little confused. And
so Julianne Moore is the head of the fishes.
Of course.
And then she wants to give key to the human project, and they don't want to give it to the British government because, one, they have an entirely anti-refugee sentiment, and they're going to still obey. They think they'll still obey you, or like
and give it to a
hide
celebrity.
it under or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So there's that, because they're literally killing refugees, right? And then so Julianne Moore dies, and we find that it's set up by the Fishers because they want to hold on to the baby as a political tool.
Yeah.
So they want their rebellion to have the baby on their side as a symbol.
Yes. What is the rebellion? So the rebellion's about...
They're just anti-government.
Yeah. I suppose that's a little bit where that's another little bit of a hurdle for me. Because the government's, of course, extremely nationalistic. And I understand that you would have protests against a government that is anti-refugees and stuff. But the stances are like quite so hardline that they're a little bit...
Who? The fishers?
And the government. Like, because the only government we see is the police. I wouldn't have minded seeing a politician making a speech or something like that, maybe. Maybe it's too much. I'm asking.
I don't know. It's different. Like, yeah, you are saying you want maybe the book is more political, which I would assume is probably a thing.
It would have to
but I
be,
think
right?
it's just this film's just telling a different story.
It's
Do you know what I
telling
mean?
two individuals caught up in this.
And I really like the road this takes. It's about people as opposed to the politics of it. You know what I mean?
Do you think people are that bad, though? I saw Sid and I felt a little bit like, I don't know how I feel about Sid. And to be fair, I really respect this film. But I don't know, I just have more questions than I realize once we start talking about it a little bit.
So,
Sid.
do I think the government would end up like that?
Yeah, and Sid. Like,
But think about where Sid works. Sid works at a refugee camp, and they literally,
beating people all the
beat
time.
people, treat these people like subhuman. Like, so a person who works there is supposed to, and Sid is someone who has a moderately reasonable moral compass, at least. Do you know what I mean?
Because he helps.
He comes back to help them without knowing she has a baby.
Yes.
So
The Sid heel turn happens extremely quickly. Is maybe my beef there.
Well, I think that
The Sid heel
in
turn.
my impression, Sid is an untrustworthy dude from the get-go, so I don't necessarily
Well,
agree
because
with
Sid
that.
pulling that prank on him is suspicious at the start. But then Sid helps him get out. But then Sid's just like, it just goes from like, let's move, to I've got a gun to your head, let's move. And it's sort of, I see how he can be rushing them along, but the uprising happens to be going on at the same time. That I think Sid would help them get out rather than say his master plan straight away. I'd like to see maybe the Sid involvement go like a little bit longer, and then he wants them to make one decision and they don't want to make that decision. Because Sid's point at that scene is like, let's get out of here. And then he's also like, I'm going to steal your baby. And he lays his cards on the table just a little bit quickly, where it's like, surely he's like, let's go. And then they get to like a quiet part and he's like, okay, give me your baby. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I didn't get this nitpicking, to be honest.
I just couldn't help but feel like Sid was a decent dude, and then he just like becomes completely indecent in 2 seconds.
But I don't think he's a decent dude. I think that this world that they live in is about give and take. It's like you do stuff for people if you can get something back. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So he has his own agenda, and that's why he acts like that.
What I do like is in that big refugee camp shootout scene is everybody like stopping at the baby. Of course, very powerful. And then how quickly they get back to fighting straight after that. I'm sure that's a very deliberate decision that they all pause for this baby, and then the fishers use it as an opportunity to shoot back, and then the cops immediately turn around and start shooting straight away.
Yes.
Good visuals, good symbolism. The other thing I didn't love. Let's just keep going through the. I didn't realize I had a list. Honestly, I promise you. Is when this is weird. So we talk about how we want to disagree on the pod because we think it will make a better pod, and then it happens, and it's just really awkward. When they get to the roof and they've got our boy Luke on the ground, and he's like yelling at them halfway across the room. I found that pretty weird.
I don't know what
like
you're talking
Key and Theo are having this discussion with Luke, and Luke's like pointing his gun at them, right?
about. Who's Luke?
Luke's the leader of the Fishers, the evil leader.
Yeah, okay.
And he's slumped against the wall, shooting out with cops every now and then.
Right.
And then he's like, hey, don't you guys leave. And they're like standing opposite sides of the room. And it's just a little bit like weirdly low drama that they're standing across the room for me. And then they're just like pointing their guns out and shooting every now and then.
I literally don't know what you're talking about. What's wrong with that scene?
It just seems like it just doesn't make sense to me in terms of the beats of the fight. Like, there's this army outside with tanks and shit, and they're shooting rockets into the building, and yet there's enough, like, breath in the room that they can, like, pause, have a bit of a discussion, cop a few stray bullets, shoot a few back, have a bit more of a discussion. Like, that bit went kind of too long for me, and
But 2 seconds later, he gets blown up when they run out of the scene.
it just felt like an extended scene where there was, like, this strange tension from across the room. But then I like when they go past and then there's all the people wanting to touch the baby and stuff like that. And then when they see the first cop, the cop's like, whoa, guys, listen to me. Stop. Damn.
What else you got?
Edgy pod. I've got some interviews with Cuaron. So he was working on Children of Men, or developing Children of Men whilst working on Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
So in case the audience isn't aware, he is the director of Harry Potter 3, Prisoner of Azkaban, also known as the movie you didn't like as a kid, but then maybe aged the best as you got older because it's spooky and artsy. He said that at the start, he was inspired by working in London, and that they were he was commuting through grimy parts of London and feeling a bit, I suppose, inspired by that to write a dystopian future. And then he said that once Harry Potter gets rolling, you actually have a lot of time to do stuff. So I guess it's just showing up on set, and then he was reading stuff that was inspiring Children of Men at the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting, just because you'd imagine that being in the Harry Potter world, you'd be either fairly relaxed or fairly, you know what I mean? You'd be fairly jovial, but I guess it is the dark Harry Potter. I wonder if what's his name? Chris Columbus was showing up to the Gringotts set and researching refugees and the trials of
I don't think they go to
human
Gringotts
race.
in the third one, surely not.
No, Chris Columbus in the first one.
Oh,
When
right.
everyone's still having fun, was he off researching heavy stuff?
He was getting ready for Pixels.
He's playing a lot of Pac-Man and diving into the Adam Sandler filmography. So I like this one. It's that he was asked about the car scene and how he wanted to shoot it, and he speaks to his cinematographer and he's like, "We want to do this," and he's like, "I don't know if we can do it," and he goes, "Fine, I'll do it in green screen. I know how we can do it. It's all good." And then Chivo, which is the nickname for the cinematographer, is like, "Okay, we'll do it." So he was inspired by the idea of hating green screen and not wanting to do it the green screen way,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually the same way that this podcast was made when I said, "Nick, I don't know, I got nothing here. There's a good joke in here somewhere, but I can't find it."
Your jokes aren't really that good today.
Oh.
Before the pod, Tom told me a joke he'd been thinking of all night, and it was landed
All
with a
night.
thud.
I haven't slept in days. And finally, this one is the most important, and it will lead us into talking about the famous bike scene. So the famous bike scene, of course. Would you say that's the famous shot, or would you say the last one is?
You mean the car? You say the bike scene is the car scene?
Yeah, the ambush scene.
You just changed the name of the scene
Well, there you have
between
it.
points.
The bike scene, the car scene, the
car
ambush.
scene.
It should be the ambush scene,
Okay,
essentially.
the ambush scene.
Yeah.
Is that the iconic scene?
Yeah.
I think in my memory, I remember the end scene, to be honest, a bit more, because it's got, not only is it like a big action sequence, but it has the scene of the stairs and stuff, which is quite powerful, I would say. So I think it resonates on two levels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cuaron said that he was going to have blood splatter the camera when Julianne Moore gets shot. And so that does happen. I noticed it on this watch, that she gets shot in the head and then there's blood, but then they whip to the back and it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
What I did notice watching the film was that the scene that leads up into the final scene,
There is blood on the camera.
there's blood on the camera, and it stays the whole time because it's real. The squib actually sprayed blood, fake blood onto the camera.
Yeah, it's until because I noticed that obviously, and then I was waiting to see when it leaves. So it kind of, there's
'Cause
like
I said-
3 or 4 drops on it, right?
We
They're
mentioned
outside-
it as it happened.
They're outside the building, and then they go in the building.
It's in the bus. It's like he's hanging out. There's a hollowed out bus.
Oh,
and
sorry.
That's when they first engage that's where they first come across gunfire, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep going.
Anyway, it's on there for quite a while, and then when they get into the building and head up the stairs, that's when it's wiped. But it looks like, because I was paying attention to it, like they get rid of a couple of drops at a time. It was interesting because I was wondering how they did it.
The transition was always going to be awkward, right?
But it was very smooth, though. It's quite smooth because, like,
I mean, like, if you were being analytical about it, of course you can notice it. So I wonder if they added some back because they absolutely would have had a cutting point.
that's a good point.
And they had to go, we need to cut it. And you're obviously not going to capture footage with blood. You would capture, it's so easy to add fake blood that it's like, why would you shoot it?
Yeah, so obviously it happens normally, and then at some point they probably cut to a new scene and they have it edited
Clean.
on.
Yeah.
And then they get rid of it progressively so it's not
Yeah.
as jarring.
Because the Julianne Moore one's a little interesting because it just whips and then it's gone. But it happens so quickly because it's only there for like a few seconds. And then, anyway, so then just the behind the scenes of that shooting that scene was that they had 14 days to do the big battle sequence in the refugee camp, and apparently by day 12 they still hadn't rolled the cameras yet, which is crazy because I guess they're just rehearsing it. So it takes 5 hours to reset the whole shot, including getting the people back in place, the screams, the explosions, all that stuff. And then they arrive at the bus, and the camera goes in and blood splatters the lens, and then Cuaron from off-screen yells, "Cut," but no one hears him because the explosions from all of the props in the buildings are happening, and he like freaks out and he's like, "Oh, I got to see what happens now." And it plays out, and then he goes up to his good mate Chivo, the cinematographer, and goes, "We need to get rid of that." And there was blood, and he's like, "What are you talking about? That is exactly what we were gonna do. We wanted to add fake blood for Julianne Moore, as if we're gonna take this away."
Yeah.
So a similar shot is going to occur on Love Cut this weekend, where we walk.
You should do it like the blood when she gets spoilers, I guess. When she gets stabbed, there's a blood spray on the camera, and it's just there for the rest of the short film. And it's really annoying.
Amazing.
Even when you cut.
I'll experiment with that.
So there's obviously a thing in referencing your joke at the start that this feels like a video game.
Yes.
And one of the really good video gamey scenes is when Clive Owen overhears their plan and is like, "We need to get out of here."
That is absolutely...
So then they escape from the house.
Because even the pose that he's doing, like leaning against a wall, like poking his head to look around a corner, because that's a look that you never do in real life because it doesn't make sense. Poking your head to the left, like whilst being at a wall, doesn't help you hear anything.
You don't go back to the wall is what you're saying. You'd be the other way around.
Yes,
maybe.
or you'd have your head poking around the corner, or just like leaning against a wall rather than... Because it's it's a video game thing because they need to go, "We're looking around the corner," so the character will point his head towards.
So that happens. He goes upstairs like, "We need to get out of here," and they sneak out of the house in the stealth thing. And then there's this really cool things where he's like taking the keys out of the car,
yes, absolutely,
pulling the thing out of the engine at the front, and like trying to get it to like that's so video game. It's like sick.
Yes,
that's a really great scene. And like
I'm glad you brought that up.
We talk about the other two being the big ones, but that's like really
that's probably my favorite scene actually because that is so tense. And starting the car is such a cool thing, and even the fact that everyone else is chasing them on foot is just aesthetic as heck and a great level of tension. And just everything culminate like that scene's so good because the stakes are so good that they're like, "We can't shoot him," and then even when the guy's got his gun to his head, he's like, "Can I shoot him? Can I shoot him?" I love that, so good.
Yeah, and when they shoot it as well, it's like the sun rising. I don't know if they just nailed that right.
They would have been waking up at a specific time.
But you do it once, and then you're like, "Fuck, that's it for the day."
Yeah, they would have had 2 takes if that.
Yeah, so it's like dawn breaking. And then the sun's rising, and by the time they're at the bottom of the hill, like the sun has kind of come up, and you can see the scene. It's just like really, really cool.
Yeah,
you do feel the tension in that one,
and because the part when the car stops at the bottom of the hill and he has to jump out and start again is so stressful. You can feel it. Mm-hmm. This film just 100% nailed stress. So for all my criticisms about.
I don't know. I just feel like they're weird criticisms. I feel like you should watch it again.
I think I should too. I think it's almost sensory overload as a film because you're so immersed.
I feel like, this movie makes me think of Good Time, even though I hadn't seen Good Time when I'd seen this the first time. I think in the story pacing. Do you know what I mean? Like Good Time also does that thing where you don't know when the story is going to end or where you are in the story. Because it's like all playing out semi in real time or whatever, or close to real time. And then, and so like the tensions keep rising and the stakes keep rising and you're like, how long can this go for? Like it's not following traditional beats and troughs or whatever.
They just engage with the rules of film, interestingly. Mm-hmm. I guess in terms of morality as well, you don't know who's doing what and like people just don't act like movie characters in this film. Mm-hmm. And that's really enjoyable to watch. Mm-hmm. I did enjoy this little bit of trivia, which is that apparently
put this in?
It had to be said. Okay. Theo smokes a lot in this film, but apparently in a world where there is no trade and no other countries, he shouldn't be able to smoke because UK can't grow tobacco and they also can't grow coffee, so there shouldn't be any coffee or cigarette. But then by extension, apparently Theo never gets to finish an entire cigarette.
Poor guy.
So Cuaron's key intention with this film, and he said this in multiple sources, is that he wants it to look like a documentary. And that's why it's shot in the wide, like single take sort of thing, instead of being cinematic like his references Blade Runner. But yeah, this is an interesting part as well. when he gets kidnapped, that was a production design heavy scene. It's quite visually stunning. I remember it stood out to me that they're in this room with all these newspaper clippings around the room and like light coming in. And then I was wondering, and then they even switched the lighting setup mid-shot. So then she hits the light
Yeah, I thought
switch.
that as well. Now that I've been on set a few times, it's like the lighting of that stressed me out a little bit.
Uh-huh. Well, and especially because they've got the tubes as the fake real lighting. Tubes obviously don't play well with cameras. But then, someone's pointed out that they wrote fake newspaper articles to cover every single part of the wall. So some PA or intern was having the best time making fake news. And also, Clive Owen was apparently offered Blood Diamond at the same
I
time
haven't
as
seen
this
that.
film.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Good? Should you have picked that?
It's like pretty good.
Was he meant to be
I think it's
Leo?
controversial because it's like kind of racist-y. I don't know. It's like a classic drama. It's a very 2000s drama where it's like they're dealing with, how 2000s, like they started tackling some heavier themes, but they still have like a Hollywood sensibility to them.
Yeah.
And it's like Leonardo DiCaprio running around in a South African accent. He's always like, oh.
But this is exactly why this film is ahead of its time in the way that it tackles the heavy themes.
Like broad, like it creatively. I think that's how you should do some of this stuff.
But that's the thing, yeah, because like you had to sell someone that like your message was important to get funding or whatever. So therefore you had to like Hollywoodify your big message. And if you do scroll through like the best picture nominees and stuff like that over the years, there's all these films that are like tackling big things and it's like, we're tackling a big thing, so therefore this is a big film. You know what I mean? And this film is like making a film that is set around some big concepts, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And this is why I
hugely love this about the film, because this is the art that we want. We talk about this all the time, that people don't actually engage with proper issues. Because this is basically doing what Tenet should have done. Because you know how Tenet nails the action but doesn't nail the story by any means. This is a film that actually combines in the middle, and this is what that should look like, right?
But it's like you can't make this film that often as well. Like I think you could make this today, but also like there's more similar things out there, like I guess with the takes and the stylization, you know what I mean, that would make this not feel as special, maybe, in my opinion. Because if a filmmaker's making a film like this every 3 or so years, it's like it'll get old quickly. I think the films that Cuaron chooses to make are quite interesting. So I've only seen, I think, from Harry Potter onwards. He has a couple before then, 2 or 3. I think he has 3 films before that, which I would be keen to see. So you've got Harry Potter, into Gravity, into Roma, right? What do you think about that run?
I still haven't seen Roma, admittedly. Bad film student. I think, and I still haven't seen Gravity. I'm not the Cuaron expert. I'm sorry.
Well, it's funny because like he's always someone that pops to my head in terms of like directors I think are amazing.
Yeah, did we talk about this on the pod or just in life? We were saying
Probably just life.
Yeah, who are our favorite directors?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I think when I looked at his list of films, it's like there's only 4 of them that I've seen.
Yeah.
And I've just realized that this is the one that makes me hold him in like high regard, particularly because I haven't seen Harry Potter in a while, and like I don't have an extreme connection to that one.
I think I felt like we do now though.
And so like then you've got that, and you've got Gravity, and Gravity I remember liking, but also like it's not my number 1 space film by any means.
The problem with Gravity, and this is a contextual comment.
No,
it's a contextual comment. Was that it came out in an era where a bunch of space movies came out. You had Interstellar, Martian, and Gravity all fighting for the space film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just remember Gravity doing the silence thing a lot, which was kind of stunning or whatever.
And I've seen the behind the scenes where like they've got people float. They had machines and rig in to make Sandra Bullock. What a crazy casting. Sandra Bullock and George Clooney.
Yeah.
It's very 90s rather than 2010s. But.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, he seems to be responding to his past films. I mean, I guess you can make this out for anyone who makes art and does more than one thing.
Yes.
So you've got Harry Potter, which is like a big thing, obviously a big success. So then he's like, okay, I'm going to do this big action film, being this film. And then from that, this flops, and maybe it's like, okay, I need Sandra Bullock and George Clooney or something like that.
But that was a hit. Everyone loved Gravity.
Gravity was a huge film. And then you go from that into Roma, which is obviously him stripping it back again, which you haven't seen, but it's him stripping it back again and telling a personal story. So I don't know. They're 4 very different films with consistent, cinematic ideas, like not narratively, but film creation-wise, constructive, similar ideas, like the long takes is a constant sort of thing. But they're very different films, basically. So that's really interesting to me, I think.
It is hard not to subscribe to auteur theory to some extent because people's work just does end up being similar.
Mhm.
And the criticisms of it are that there's a million voices in a film rather than just one. But yeah, ultimately with the director discussions, it gets interesting because it's like, one director doesn't and probably shouldn't make all of your favorite movies because that's subscribing too much to auteur theory where you're like, this person's a genius, but in reality, as a fan, you should be picking your favorite movies.
Yeah, for sure.
But there are people who weigh in on films often, and you're always interested to see what they have to say. Like
the people, the
filmmakers making movies.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like a good example of that is like the Coen brothers. Like they've made a lot of films now, and like not every now and then they just need to make a masterpiece, and then they're still in that high regard. But it's not like every film that the Coen brothers make is the best film ever necessarily. Do you know what I mean? It's just you want filmmakers that are exciting and doing new things, I guess, or maybe not even new things.
I think you actually want them to have their own voice because Wes is the classic example, just because he's saying similar things, but you're always like, there aren't movies that are like Wes Anderson.
But Wes Anderson could never be my favorite filmmaker because like they're all Wes Anderson films. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
You'd want someone to at least tackle two vastly different things, like Boogie Nights and There'll Be Blood.
It's like that's a good point. And it's the same with artists. Like your favorite artists are the people who do new things every now and then, as opposed to making the same album over and over again, but consistently making the same album. It's like, this is why like I like Nick Cave, but it's like Nick Cave has made very similar stuff consistently of high quality for a while. And it's like, well, I can't actually tackle all of that because it's all very similar. I'll just take one or two and that's it, you know?
Yeah. I think it actually is an inspiring part of filmmaking, the idea that someone's growing and changing their views, and just the idea that their canon exists and it affects how their films are being made, that the last one was influencing the next one and so on.
But that's the good thing is like when you get to look back on, I mean, I'm not super well versed in film history, but what's cool about film and with any art, I guess, is where you get to look back as it all as one big thing, and there's less pressure on each individual element for you to reflect on.
So many movies just age better than they do exist when they come out, because there's as we said, imagine how different this film is if it comes out now. It's copying on a lot more attention, and
exactly
it'd be doing that thing. Yeah, I guess it's just a really interesting movie as an exercise today, because like not being into movies that much when this came out, being 8, and
I remember seeing posters for it in Video
really?
Easy and like being intimidated by it.
Oh, really?
Well, when you're young and you see MA and you're like, this is like a
shit's
serious,
heavy.
Yeah.
It's just not having the context for a movie that is something that kind of nails what you're interested in now is really fun, and it's like you take none of the baggage of the contemporary criticism, and it's like
that's it. The discourse is sometimes exhausting around films. You know what I mean? And that's what's good about this pod. Is getting to view things from a different lens. Because, we couldn't help but talk about Minari and, like, this is the film we need. Like, there was all that context for it. And it's different. Wow. Are we friends again? Yeah. And that stuff is good. And, like, if you're living in the time period, it's obviously good to be aware of, like, what's shaping the discourse, I guess. But it is also nice to view things separate from all of that.
Yeah.
Here's a casting what if for you. Because I get these two mixed up in my brain.
So your imagination one.
Who?
I know who you're going to say.
Who?
Is it Gerard Butler?
No, I was going to say Clive Owen, or if Clive Owen was Colin Farrell.
I'm in. Do you like Clive Owen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know any of his films now that I think about it. I could do a quick letterbox pull, but this is like the only thing I really know him in. And I think that's why I used to think he was Colin Farrell. But I love Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell is aging like a fine wine.
He is so good.
He's hot. This man is, and I don't mean that. Well, I do mean that. But like everything you see I
literally just looked up Clive Farrell.
Colin Farrell has high clout in this family, but even contemporary discourse, right?
Wait, let me look up Clive Owen. God damn, I keep messing
So
up.
when did the Colin Farrell moment happen for you?
I feel like seen the Yorgos films.
I feel like it was True Detective when it kicked off.
Oh, right. Okay.
That was when...
But, like, that's the season that no one likes as well.
But he was good in it, you know?
So, Clive Owen's in Sin City.
Yep.
Because he's Born Identity, Inside Man, Closer.
I've heard Inside Man's good.
Yeah, he's in Elizabeth.
What's his most recent stuff?
Right,
Because he helped write this as well. He came on board and was assisting with that. It's just
he does.
fascinating.
You know, it's cool. Like his performance, he does feel very integral to this film at the same time. As much as I think he's Colin Farrell, like, and his performance isn't particularly out there or anything like that. But he's very solid.
He's doing the everyman. But I guess he's a charming everyman. Like, because he's a bit shit, but he's believably shit and believably good. He's not asking you to, like, sympathize with him completely or not. You know what I mean?
The last film he was in was called Romantic Guide to Lost Places. He was in Gemini Man with Will Smith, I guess.
Oh, wow. So he's kind of dropped off?
I mean, I don't know.
Apparently he was super hot coming out of this. So Cuaron wanted him, but he was... Because Inside Man was big.
Okay. I'm trying to find this film in his discography. He
seems like... I just would have guessed if you showed me this and you said, is this guy famous or not now? I would have picked that he was really famous. Because his look... Don't you think he looks like someone who would get better with age?
Well, this is the thing that I said to you. He has such a detailed face. He has so many lines on his face, and I'm not saying that in a negative way.
And he's a handsome man. He's got that real man. Like, he could be in Cold War. He has that sort of charm.
Yeah. We just need to shoot him in black and white.
Man, wait till you see there's details in his face. But yeah.
He's the sort of guy you want to look like when you're older.
You want to look like him now? You want to look like him as a kid?
Because you want to have a bit of a baby face as long as you can. Okay, but like when you wrinkle up a bit and all that sort of stuff, you want to look like you've been chiseled from, you know what I mean? You look like someone...
Some hardened stuff.
Yeah.
You were a pack-a-day smoker, but in a cool way.
But you never get through a cigarette.
Yeah, exactly.
So the cast in this, I think, is really good.
Yeah. Julianne Moore, got some...
She's great. Thoughts? I really like her. Do you like her?
Yeah, I do. I think she's
her PTA
a steady
stuff
presence.
Is good.
She's always like the Julianne. Like, she's just like an intense, famous actor, sort of. I can't help but feel like she is a little bit Julianne Moore when I see her. But, you know, she gets
she's called Julian in this, which is confusing to my brain. And then you've got Michael Caine, who plays a good
What do
character.
you think, Michael Caine?
In this?
Yeah.
Well, he's good in this, definitely. I like him.
Yeah.
Tom and I were talking about how Michael Caine just serves exposition nowadays.
Cuaron had an interview where he was saying...
That he didn't like exposition?
Yeah.
But you got to say...
I was just teasing Nick and this film when it came on because Michael Caine comes in and starts spraying exposition in like casual dialogue way. He's like, how crazy is it that all the roads have shut down and the world's looking pretty shit?
Yeah, but compared to this to like, Tenet, what he was in recently. Yeah. It's funny though, because I just Googled, because you were like, Michael Caine's conservative. And I looked up and it's like, Michael Caine voted for Brexit. And I was like, how are you in this film and then voting for Brexit? Like,
yeah, he's
a different story.
And he has said this, that he played this character imitating John Lennon, which is such old man like vibes, you know?
Well, he was in the 60s when John Lennon was around. He was like, look at this guy.
And what was he doing in the 60s? He was carrying his suitcase and he was like eating white bread sandwiches.
From what I got from his Wikipedia page, he just doesn't like getting taxed, which is pretty much everyone who's
he's rich person conservative rather than
racist conservative. Well,
I'm sure they overlap a little bit.
But he's like super rich, Michael Caine. Think about doing 5 decades worth of acting. Yeah. He's loaded.
It's strange. He seems like such a nice guy.
I'm sure he's a nice guy on a personal level, and he's still getting gigs, so he must be
and it's not like he's cancelled, so it's fine. We're overselling.
Well, you
this
just can't cancel someone for making certain voting decisions. You know what I mean?
True. Ultimately.
Well, at least I don't think we should.
Yeah, and he's friends with Nolan. He shows up on schedule for every...
Yeah, but Nolan's like the most apolitical director of all time.
Nolan is what?
Like, we've done it. We did a lot of this in both Nolan pods.
Can't believe Nolan's our most potted director.
Yeah, who else is in this? And then everyone else is really good, I think.
I like Luke. He's around a little bit without knowing specifically what he's in. What's he in?
I don't know.
He's familiar, isn't he?
He's in The Martian, Doctor Strange, 12 Years a Slave. Maybe that's it. He's the lead in 12 Years a Slave.
I probably know him from The Martian the most. He's like the friendly scientist.
I haven't seen The Martian.
Not saying Martian changes your life, but it's a good movie.
I don't know. I saw it's a film that I'd seen bits of when you were watching it, I think, and I was like, that's enough.
I like Bill's comments on it. He's just saying that it's an ultimate ode to Matt Damon because it's like one dude just carrying a film, and the film just doesn't work if you don't like Matt Damon. So it's actually like rarer than you think. Yes, I do have the return of
Academic.
academic
Let's hope
writing.
it's more concise. There's only one article.
There's only one. And
Okay.
this one, so I didn't really get as much time as I would have liked to dive into the academic texts on this film, because there were quite a few about camera work and about immersion and stuff, and I'm sure about the world as well. But this one was like a review, an academic review, and it's about the last birth formula. So it's criticizing this article written by Anna Faktorovich, is about criticizing the idea of a last baby on Earth sort of thing, and saying how it's contradictory. So she says that the idea of this world doesn't make sense because how is there a refugee crisis if there's no babies? Because the humanity should be declining in, like, there should be more positions, more opportunities and stuff. They shouldn't be overpopulated. The film logic is obviously just that the whole world is cooked, not just London, so everywhere is coming to there. And I think it's believable, you know.
Yeah, but it's interesting. It's not talking about people aren't mad because they are. The world isn't dystopian because of loss of opportunity or like loss of standard of living necessarily. It's because people don't believe in the future anymore, and
People are being shit. It's
people are being
like a
shit.
moral, ethical collapse.
It's saying like if we don't have a future and hope, humanity doesn't stand together.
Yeah. I think I really do like the scene at the school as well. I like the nurse. I like the nurse character. I think she's good. Marianne.
Miriam, I think. When she gets pulled from the bus, pretty intense.
Yeah, and a good death as well for like the mission, you know. But I like her speeches about being a nurse and seeing the miscarriages. You know, believable bit of world building. I like it.
I just want to also highlight that scene when they're going into the refugee camp is really good and really intense.
Going through the lines. Is
Yeah,
that what you
like
mean?
that. Yeah, so like when they're on the bus and stuff like that, and then going through the lines, and like he gets separated a little bit from her and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's
and it's
all
just
very-
enough to be really tense.
Yeah.
And it's also pretty exciting when they do get into the refugee camp, because it's a little bit like, oh, what's this whole other world, you know? Anyway. So, yes, so this article, I just want to read it out because she has pretty funny, heavy-handed insults of this idea. So she's talking, the article, this like key intro part is saying how she doesn't like the idea and she thinks it's dumb. And she goes, something about Earth's salvation. This is not a good thing. Literature has typically used allusions and symbolic characters to convey a moral meaning without dipping too far into scripture. But what is this reference saying if the mother of humanity's hopes for the future is a barely educated woman who does not know the identity of the father? What is the point of humanity's survival if this new breed of humans is going to be barely literate, morally questionable, and otherwise lacking in grace or ambition?
What the fuck?
How shit is that?
Oh my god. Okay.
That's straight
That
up
took
just
a very different turn than I was expecting.
Yeah, because
I was like,
saying,
cool, maybe the logic is flawed. That's fine.
I was saying to Nick, do I put this bit in? But it was just so heavy-handed, like offensive.
That's fucked up.
And like, let's just ignore the racial, implications of this horrible message. It's just like ethically really rude and terrible. And then she goes on the next bit to talk about how it's like, it's promoting like a what is it?
But that's so that quote is like
It's
such
shit.
a bad quote that makes you think like,
She's talking about the religious stuff. She's criticizing the use of religion.
Okay, so this is
themes.
obviously like some posted in like conservative film studies journal.
101.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, bad take. You know what I mean? If like the whole point of this film is literally the opposite
Yeah.
thing, which is saying that you can't judge people
Yeah.
because people are people with
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway.
Take.
Does that even deserve to be an academic writing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like thinly veiled racism.
Yeah. There you have it.
Writing.
I like the school scene. Arriving at the school is a good break in the film, and obviously it allows for some good dialogue and great cinematography,
about that
as you
shot through her-
highlighted.
yeah.
Did you notice that yourself, or did you hear about it?
No, I heard about it. I mean, I noticed it. Sorry. I noticed it.
You heard about it, did
Wow, it's like I couldn't notice that she was in the scene as well.
It was cool.
through
It
the
was just
glass.
like, I doubt they planned it. I assume it was spontaneous on the set. Like, oh, this crack's great. Maybe we can space this out really well. But then even the school thing, it didn't even click to me that, of course, the school's abandoned because there's no kids. That's a powerful metaphor.
What
isn't it?
about the scenes with his uncle or cousin where he's like rich and got all like the old art and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he's an important character because as a viewer, you're going, well, it can't, as I said at the start of this, like you can't all be like, this world is shit. There would be people who'd be cashing it
Exactly.
in.
But this is what this film does well, is that it goes through that stuff quite quickly but effectively, I would say.
Yeah.
You know?
And what's with the kid with the eating the tablets and playing his mobile Rubik's Cube?
I don't know. That just feels like a dystopian sort of vibe to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or like maybe that this guy is like a young person and is...
Everyone's got pressure on them, right?
I would say more just like there's something wrong with reproduction that,
Okay.
he's got some disability or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
I like the stuff. I like the way the film kicks off, actually, talking about the youngest person.
That's what I was going
being
to
a
talk about. That
celebrity.
stuff is really funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool.
And I love when he goes in the office and he's like, I'm a bit more shook up from Baby Diego's death than I thought. And the guy looks at him like, I don't believe you, but that's so funny.
Yeah. What do you think his job is at this office?
I don't know. I feel
Nothing?
like something makes me feel like he works for government, but I don't think he necessarily works for government. I don't know.
What's private business like in this world?
In the coffee shops and stuff, I guess.
Yeah. So obviously there's still wealth and like normalcy, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I guess maybe this film is about him, and like just him emerging himself back in the
real world.
Yeah, because even the whole sub-mentions that are like about how he used to be political and then he got shaken. I think he's a good character like that because that's supposed to relate it to the audience because a lot of people lose their edge when they get a bit older.
Yeah, but it's also about hope in that he's lost hope or whatever. So it's like he doesn't want to
With
fight
his
for
child
stuff
as
anymore.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird scene when they're talking about his child passing away. Jasper's telling it because they're kind of like jovial when they're talking about it, and he's just around the corner like, God, I hate my life. And I don't know.
But also I think that performance is good for some reason.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking about the way it was framed because it's
the lack of tonal, like heavy stuff is creative and probably
it's
more realistic.
It's focused on Clive Owen. And also that stuff is like 20 years ago. Or, do you know what I mean? In the scheme of his life. So it's like,
he shouldn't be like breaking down in tears. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or maybe that Michael Caine feels more comfortable talking about it
Yeah.
semi-casually. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I'm just saying it's different
And,
to what
and
you'd
the way that
expect.
it's shot where Clive Owen's in focus and everyone else is out of focus is cool.
I like Key. Key's a good character.
Yeah.
She's good banter, good fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, that's timer.
All right.
A lively discussion.
Kicked my mic. All right. Tom, what worked for you with this film?
Long takes, obviously. Big winner. The third person perspective, specifically, because you have long takes and stuff, but you don't always get the third person thing. But the use of point of view in this film is really enjoyable. I like how information is revealed to you from one character's perspective the whole time. And it really works. I think it really combines with world building because it's like, it's using exposition in a fun way. It's like, piece together what's happened in this world based on snippets of his day-to-day life. I think that's a really good, engaging form of it, right? Clive Owen works. Yeah, I'm sad we don't have more relationship with Clive Owen.
Maybe we'll get into it.
Yeah, let's deep dive in Clive. The action... Oh, we didn't even talk about the camera of how they shot the bike stuff. Just quickly, look it up if you
On
can.
YouTube, yeah.
Because it's really cool. They built a rig where there's like a platform below the car and a platform above the car. And that's where Cuaron and the camera operator and the focus puller sit. And so the camera moves on this robot arm through the car. And Julianne Moore and Luke in the front seat, they're
Popping up and down.
Yeah, thrown out of their seats just so they can reach the back seat. And the whole like ping pong ball bit's good. It's a good bit because it's creative. Like when they swing for personality, it's always good. Yes, so camera work. Performances are good. I think everyone's good, and I think it's a well cast film as well. And production design and world building is a big winner.
Okay, what didn't work?
What didn't work is
What would you change?
What would I change? Stuff just does like maybe I'd make it a little more political, as I've said, in terms of like a little bit more explanation. I think the fishers seemed a little bit too motivated without really explaining their motivation to us. I know why we broadly broadly know why they do the things they do.
But it's interesting because you like are considering them as villains, which is like the movie doesn't read to me as like them running away from villains. You know what I mean? If you don't view them as people who are like necessarily antagonists of the film, then I don't think you feel all that way about their characters. Because
that's sort of my thing though, like, because I just would have liked to hear a little more level-headedness where we knew why they wanted it, and I know why they want it, but it's also like the film does a deliberate job of making them seem like bad guys because they're still an antagonist. They're still interrupting our hero's journey, right? So they're like kind of a syndrome character in Incredibles, where it's like comes from a goodish place, but then they kind of get pushed to being bad. And I just would have liked a little more ration behind why they're bombing places. But I know that, and I also do like the world building where they're like, we're not bombing those places, it's the government. But then because you never meet a government individual who's bad, I don't know, maybe it's just like caveman brain Tom going like, you're not following convention. I don't understand what's going on here. Yeah, I want to watch it again, of course. But yeah, there's just a few like things, and I didn't love that they ran into them there. I'm fine with them running into them, but it just seemed a little bit too crazy that they just meet them on the streets in this refugee camp and stuff.
But are they not there because they're trying to get the baby back? Because they know they're going to be there?
But they don't even intercept them at like a doorway or something. They intercept them literally in the middle of the street. It just confused me a little bit. Sid's heel turn, not a huge fan.
Sid's been a heel the whole time.
But he isn't. He's also a nice bloke. He helps them when
I don't see that.
They get out of the truck.
I think he's a self-serving person. I think that's consistent.
Okay. Yeah, it's just a bit of uncertainty on motivations and explanations and stuff like that.
All right. What would you rate it? What do you rate it?
It's a strong 4.
Strong 4. Okay, I can live with that. That's fine.
It's like you can't undermine the fact that this is an iconic film because the camera work's so dynamic and so unique. You know what I mean? I can't say Tenet's a 4 and then not say this is a 4 because they're both nailing the action sequences in different ways, you know? I love the context of this film. Isn't this the film that we thought we were getting with Soylent Green? When you think about it a bit more. It's like nailing contemporary concerns and stuff. Yeah, I need a little more time with it. I would like to watch it again, but there's just a few things that are a little bit either heavy-handed or underexplored for me. But yeah, you can't undermine the masterclass in uniqueness. You know, this is like a film that is distinct.
Nice. This is a 5-star film for me. I love it.
Perfect film.
I think it's amazing.
Wouldn't change a thing.
No, I felt that way when I watched it the first time. Like, this is a film that makes you go like, wow, look at what film is capable of. And it just is, like we've been saying, it's so ahead of its time, I think. I don't know. I probably already talked about what I like about it already. But it's just like, yeah, obviously the camera stuff is amazing. I think the performances are great. The content, what it's written about and the way it tackles that stuff, I think is great as well. It doesn't bite off more than it can chew. I just think it's amazing, you know? Mm-hmm. It's so good. I would just watch it again and again and again. It's just such a thing. It's such like a neat, digestible thing that kills it, in my opinion, you know? Guess that's a wrap. Schneider Cut is coming next week. We were meant to do it this week, but we're a bit chockers because Love Cut is this weekend.
Love Cut is filming this weekend. Huge.
Tom's going Cuaron this weekend.
Yeah. I'm saying, I don't know. I said to my DP, I'll shoot it in green screen. And she said, no.
That makes no sense.
Why?
We're shooting in a share house.
Yeah. I'm excited. I am excited. I'm feeling hyped. And the memories you make on set are like genuinely some of the best memories you have. Don't you reckon?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Nick's making an appearance on set.
Do something.
And as an extra in the film, perhaps. Definitely. But, look out for him when you watch Love Cut, viewers.
And look out for the soundtrack. It's going to be slapping.
How exciting.
Once I get kicked off, so we'll see.
Yeah. Creative differences. Awesome.
Cool.
Follow us on Instagram, Lil Silky Official, and at I'm Good Brother.
Yes.
I'm just subscribe to us on YouTube. Search Ego Our Podcast.
What number? This is like my third 5. Done a few 5s already.
I'm giving them around.
Well, no, it was Portrait, David Byrne, and this.
Chili's was a 5, right?
I can't remember.
Yeah,
it was a nostalgic
I think we both
5.
gave it 5.
Yeah. How many 5s have you given? Any? Oh, you gave In the Mood for Love a 5. You've done one.
Yes, because I
A bit
asked
more
for a song.
conservative, a bit more Michael Caine on the other side of the table.
Yeah, you know what's not conservative? My 3.5s. My 3.5s give them out like that.
Take them. I got too many.
It's just hard. We need to do. Well, we don't need to do. No one wants to hear you talk about bad movies, basically. But
Yeah.
it would be well served if I gave out a few 2s. But the whole thing is you're not drawn to films that are 2s and 1.5s because they're boring.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good movies to watch
Exactly.
in this world.
Yeah.
So why would you waste your time?
Yeah. So we're only likely to maybe stumble across a message that we like disagree with, or like a sentiment in a film, and then it'll be a bad rating for that. We just think it's like ugly or something like that. You know.
Yeah.
You know, if we
Maybe
were
if Anna Faktorovich has made a film that's well written with like great dialogue and great
cinematography.
yeah, and then she comes through with that bullshit,
Yeah.
with that weak shit.
Okay.
Looking forward to the Twitter mentions from we'll see what happens.
All right. This has been another classic.
Another classic or a fresh one. If we knew what we wanted, you'd be useless. Tell us what's in, tell us who's done. Another antique ship